Hi everyone, we're delighted that you're able to join us today for this live Q&A with ACLT, which stands for the African Caribbean Leukemia Trust. We spoke about ACLT earlier this week during our week 2 newsletter, and we're delighted that they're joining us today to tell you more about what it is that they do. During this session, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to submit any questions that you have. Please be aware also that this session is going to last around 30 minutes. So now I'm going to hand you over to the founders of ACLT. We've got Oren and Beverly here with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Beverly De Gale and my partner is Oren Lewis. We're actually married and we are the co-founders of the ACLT, which stands for the African Caribbean Leukemia Trust. Our charity was started in 3 years after our son, Daniel De Gale, was diagnosed with an aggressive acute form of leukemia. It's actually called acute lymphoblastic leukemia. He was 6 years of age, and once he was diagnosed, we were taken to Great Ormond Street Hospital to commence a 2-year course of treatment for that type of childhood leukemia. And at the end of the 2 years, everything seemed to be going well, but 9 months after Daniel came off of treatment, he suffered his first relapse. That means that the cancer came back. And we was at this time told that Daniel would need a bone marrow transplant to survive. Bone marrow matching is race specific. So that means that if you are a person who is, for example, Black, and you need a matching donor, as in our case with our son, you need people who are Black or Black mixed race to register as donors. And back in 1996, when Daniel actually suffered his first relapse, less than 580 Black people had ever registered as potential donors. And our consultant at Great Ormond Street told us that Daniel would have less than a 1 in a quarter million chance of finding a donor on the world bone marrow registers, because so few Black people had ever registered. And so for myself and Oren, we knew that we needed to do something and do something quick. And so we set up the ACLT in the June of 1996 in the hope that we would be able to engage with the Black mixed race and actually other communities on this subject matter, in the hope that through talking about our son, we would be able to find matches for him and for other people in this country and around the world that found themselves in this awful situation. I'll just quickly move forward. After 6 years of searching on Daniel's behalf and him receiving chemotherapy and radiotherapy throughout this period, whilst we were campaigning, getting people to register as donors, and trying to work with other patients as well, our donor was found. A born-again Christian in the United States was found to be Daniel's lottery ticket, and a lottery ticket for our family. She heard an appeal, decided to register, and was immediately found. So within months, she donated stem cells to save our son's life, which was great. For myself and Oren, with the charity, we were doing media appeals, working with other families, hosting registration drives in sometimes 2, 3 a week to try and find donors for other patients, as well as our son prior to his finding his donor. And as of today, the ACLT has registered over 160,000 new potential stem cell donors onto the UK registry, which assists patients in this country and around the world. We also register blood donors because as part of Daniel's treatments, he was receiving blood. in recent years, we started to register organ donors as well, because in all forms of donation, especially in the BAME communities, there is a lack of donors that are available for patients like our son. And so we work in all areas to get them registering. Now, as far as Daniel goes, he received his donated stem cells on the 16th of June, 1999. 6 months later, he was able to go back to school. And it was just that simple act of someone initially giving a blood sample, being found to be Daniel's match, and then donating stem cells, which is pretty much like giving blood. And Orin will explain in more detail as we move along. It gave us back our son for 9 wonderful years. Now, at the age of 21, we actually lost Daniel, and we lost him to multiple organ failure. We believe that the 6 years that Daniel waited for his donor to be found, he received too much chemotherapy and radiotherapy treatments in that period. And we believe that the adverse effects of those treatments are what took him away from us. Eventually, he was leukemia-free, but his body was quite frail. And in the end, he developed a condition called hemolytic anemia, which meant that he required 3 to 5 units of donated blood every single week just to be able to get up, go to university, and to come home and to be able to enjoy life. That went on for 2 years prior to us losing him to multiple organ failure. And the reason why we now do multiple organ failure is because we suddenly realized that this was a massive problem, especially in the Black and BAME communities, that people were not and continue to this day to not register in large enough numbers. And so ACLT, now in Daniel's memory, are engaging with communities on all 3 subject matters to try and ensure that the numbers are up. And we are quite proud of the fact that we've been able to save over 160 lives of people who needed stem cell transplants. And those numbers go up each year with new donors being found almost on a monthly basis. And we've been able to register thousands of new blood and organ donors from all ethnicities, primarily though in the Black and BAME communities. And that's pretty much the work of ACLT.
It really does highlight the need for organizations like ourselves to be in the community and going into schools, colleges, universities, corporate world, political world, the high medical world, influencing not only the people to be aware of the need to become a potential lifesaver for someone, but also to influence policy at the highest level in government and in the NHS to make sure that the access to treatment and access to care and opportunity to find out more information about being a donor is equitable across all racial fronts. So as much as we are called the ACLT and African Caribbean Leukemia Trust, as Beverly highlighted, we've spent many years over this last 25 years trying to help anyone of any race, but with a significant sort of effort to try and get those with the unmet needs, those from the Black, Asian, minority ethnic community. So it's an all-inclusive message that we're talking about. You've heard stats, Beverly's highlighted. Just to highlight something in terms of stats on the organ donation, BAME people are overrepresented on too many things in terms of the waiting list in comparison to their white counterparts for organs. Not enough people from those backgrounds are donating as deceased donors or living donors. So there is a constant push to get people to become organ donors and stay in the system, as well as to give blood, as well as to join the stem cell registry. So moving on, I think this is appropriate, since talking about people of all ethnicities, to highlight an individual called Peter. Peter is an individual that needs stem cell transplant for a condition that it means that he has to get the transplant, to give more time, borrowed time, to so he can be with his family. So I'll let the video highlight his story.
Sorry, guys.
Just a technical glitch.
Yes.
Give it another try.
Yes, Dima. Should we maybe move on to the other video and we can play?
Okay. Well, the other video is of a lady called a young lady called Sarah, Sarah Hutchison, who needs an organ transplant, and her video is sort of self-explanatory.
Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll try to play the videos again at the end. We're just having some technical problems with playing them. We'll just jump right into the Q&A. And the first question is, does COVID impact on the ability to donate at the moment?
Yes, it does. On many fronts. Because it's a virus, it's a very deadly virus, as we all know. For someone to donate stem cells, also known as bone marrow, or to donate an organ, is if that person is carrying even the antibodies of coronavirus, let alone the actual disease, is a potential problem to the patient that's going to receive that donation. Because what you've got to understand is that when you donate bone marrow stem cells, you are basically donating your engine system, your DNA, into that person. And if there is a fault in terms of a virus, then of course, as that DNA starts to grow in the bone marrow of the patient, their system is very immune suppressed from the start. And so they're very vulnerable to any disease or flus. And of course, coronavirus is very deadly. So that's why during the coronavirus, literally all organ donation transplants stopped. Patients were on hold, waiting for it to stop so they can receive a transplant. The same thing happened on the bone marrow stem cell right across the world. Everything ground to a halt because the patient is too vulnerable to receive someone's stem cells if they have the virus. So that is a big no-no. And the same thing with blood. Although you can give blood, and blood donation has continued right through the pandemic. They make sure that that person who's donating blood does not have coronavirus, so that it doesn't get passed on.
Can you imagine as a patient knowing that your donation is there waiting, but you can't receive it? You know, and in that little gap of time, you know, the cancer could come back more vigorously, or the disease of the organ could become even worse. So for those patients, it was a very dicey time. And we just hope that not too many would have lost their lives whilst we were waiting for the go-ahead to continue.
That's good. Thank you. What are any other ways that COVID-19 has impacted the charity?
It's had quite an effect. Right from the start, like everyone in this country and around the world, we isolated ourselves at home and worked from home with the office set up there. And what it meant was that we had those vulnerable patients that we're campaigning and supporting. We have had to bring them on almost on a daily basis to see how they're doing, because they're shielding, keep their spirits up, talk to them, let them know that there's a support mechanism in terms of coming through us to get their message out via the online platforms. We also continued raising awareness, again, on an online platform, in terms of the awareness like we are today, rather than coming to you and physically one-to-one talking about donation. It's now being done across the virtual online platform.
What is involved in being a stem cell donor?
So, right, so to join the register, all people do is now, because of COVID, you go online and you submit an online application, just put in a few details about yourself, and then you will be sent cheek swabs, and dependent on which registry you sign up with. For example, if you're between the ages of 17 to 55, you can sign up with with one of our partners called DKMS, and they will send you 3 of these cheek swabs that Oren's got in his hands. And all you do is just swab the insides of your mouth for 1 minute with each cheek swab, and then you put them in a pack that it's sent to you in, and you send it off. And from those cheek swabs, we can determine each person's bone marrow tissue type. And then that information goes onto a database, and every time someone's diagnosed as needing a match in this country or around the world, you will be checked to see if you can help that person. For most of us, we'll never match. We've been on the register for a couple of decades now, never matched a soul, but we know that by being on the register, we are increasing the chances of finding matches for patients. But if you are fortunate enough to be a donor, donating stem cells is pretty much like giving blood. They take blood out of a vein in your arm, and then the blood is filtered through a little machine that sits next to you, which takes away the stem cells which are in the blood, and then the blood is given back to you in the other arm. So you're basically sitting like this on a bed or a hospital chair for anything up to 4 hours, whilst they're taking 5% of the stem cells that are in your blood, and the 5% that you actually donate replenish, so you get them back. So you're not actually losing anything, but you are potentially saving someone's life.
Yeah. And then that small bag of pink looking fluid is given to a courier, who then goes through, say they're leaving this country, they would go through Heathrow, Gatwick, maybe off to America, if the donors in America, if the patient's in America, and they fast track all the way through either side to get to the hospital, and then it's an intravenous drip into the patient's bloodstream. And for the next, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 months maybe, they will be there in isolation, depending on their health at the time. If it's going okay, they go home, and then anything from 2 to 5 years later, they will get the all clear, because the stem cells that you donated, they've got to actually manifest themselves positively inside the bone marrow of the patient, work with the good cells that are left there, and to start creating cancer-free blood. But it is a marathon for the patient, all because of someone initially given a cheek swab somewhere around the world. And the ethnicity matching is so important, which is why the charity was started. So as a rule of thumb, someone who's white Northern European at best has maybe a 60 to 90% chance of finding a match, a 10 out of 10 match somewhere around the world, because most of the 36, 37 million people on the stem cell registry, the bone marrow registry, are of that background. If you are of an ethnic minority, especially if you're Black, it is down to about 20%, because of 2 main factors. One, there's still not enough of us on the registries around the world, and 2, people of African descent come from the most diverse background, genetic background in the world, because Africa is a massive continent, and our bone marrow types are very, very different amongst us. So you got to get a lot of us to get comparable to other races.
And the interesting thing about when a patient receives donated stem cells from a donor, the patient's blood type will change to that of the donor. it's quite amazing. It's an amazing thing. But obviously by donating, you are potentially giving that person a second chance at life. It's wonderful.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
If you're signed up with another on another donation register, can you sign up to others?
No, so if you're already on the stem cell bone marrow register, you do not need to sign up again, because all of the registers, when a patient needs a match, all of the registers are checked. So if you're on, great, you don't need to do anything more. But if you're not on, obviously we'd like you to join.
In your view, are there any barriers to donation that are faced specifically by people of Black or ethnic minority groups? What sort of barriers do they face?
It's an interesting question. There's a multitude of barriers that are self-inflicted as well as external. Self-inflicted insofar as there's within BAME communities, and it's different for different communities, whether you be Black or Asian and so on. In the Black community, there's a lot of myths and fears and taboos about giving something of yourself, donating something of yourself, whether it be blood, organ donation, bone marrow stem cell donation. And it's because of people believing that there's going to be major drilling into your knee, your spine, your hand with a massive drill to get someone's bone marrow stem cells, which is nothing of the kind. As Beverly highlighted, it's like a longer version of giving blood. That's only if you are the actual donor. People think that there's cloning and experimentation that might be done, and it's not religiously ethical to do so. When in fact, if you look at all the religious texts, whether it be Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, Christian, they all say it's actually good to give, but it's based on knowledge rather than hearsay and myths and fears passed down through the generations. Externally, barriers, people just haven't been aware of the actual need to find out more, to register and see how their ethnicity is so important. Because the ethnic matching is crucial, whether it be bone marrow stem cells or organ donation, and to a slightly lesser degree on blood donation, people don't realize the correlation between that person who's Black needs a well-matched donation. It means they're addressing me. Same with a white person. It works that way. And when I say white, you break it down. If someone is Polish descent, Slavic descent, then there's a chance that their donor is not going to be Anglo-Saxon. They're going to be someone of Slavic descent, Polish descent from that genetic area, or Scandinavians. Scandinavians match Scandinavians. West Africans match West Africans, which is why when Daniel found his donor eventually after 6 years, it's because his donor, who lives in Detroit, was of West African descent originally through obviously what happened to our race hundreds of years ago. It's not where you're born, it's where genetically your genes go back to. But as long as you're on a registry somewhere, you can be found. So there are external barriers in terms of people not being aware, not enough work being done by the commission inside the NHS and the registries to actually embrace those communities. It's happening now, and of course we've spent the last 25 years doing that to try and help everyone.
And just also to say, there are health reasons that would stop people from registering, but anybody that's interested in actually sign up, once you go online and start submitting your application, a few health questions will be asked, and those questions will filter out whether or not a health condition that you may have will allow you or may not allow you to register.
Just to clarify one thing, if someone has a blood trait, like sickle cell trait or thalassemia trait, which you mainly find in people of African descent or Mediterranean descent, you can actually register to give blood, and you can register to become a bone marrow stem cell donor. That's one of the big myths in those communities.
Are there more ways in which those of who aren't part of the BAME background can better support ACLT beyond fundraising?
Beyond fundraising, there's word of mouth.
Yeah, ambassadors.
Yeah, people on this webcast right now listening to this message, what you're hearing from us, take that message, go to our website, aclt.org.
Yeah. If you go to the website and fill in the form to stay on our database, then we send out newsletters maybe 3 or 4 times a year, and the messaging that we're giving, if you could pass that out to your family and friends, if you're part of a big church or a big community where you think they might be interested in hearing a talk from us, and we can go in and register people as donors. You know, those are ways in which we get our numbers up right across the board, and obviously, ultimately, as we always say, we save lives.
Brilliant. How, I'm sure you've said this before, but how many people have you helped since the conception of the charity?
Well, we know at a conservative estimate, just on the bone marrow stem cell side, at least 160 people have found their donors through
Stem cell.
stem cell bone marrow side, found donors through our work. We get a monthly report from the registry. In fact, there's 4 elements to the registry that come together, and they send us updates to say, right, back in last month or a year ago, a donor was found from a drive that you did at this time, this place, this date, and we can look back through our records and we can see, was it based on a certain appeal, where it was, and they tell us the age and sex of the person who's actually gone on to donate. And we find, as Beverly said, we find donors right across the racial spectrum. White donors, Asian donors, black donors, mixed race donors, male, female, young, old. We're planting seeds, and they're growing, and suddenly they blossom, come to fruition, because they're suddenly being found to be a donor for someone somewhere around the world. And it is very highlighted in Daniel's story. It's like the ultimate winning lottery ticket. And yeah.
And also, just to say that if you are a match for someone and you donate, it's your choice, but after a 2-year break, you can go back on the registry, because you don't only have to be a donor once. And for most people who actually do donate, because it is so simple, most people do actually continue and stay on the register.
How do the waiting list for a donor here in the UK compare to elsewhere in the world?
It's a very good question. Interesting. If you look at on the bone marrow stem cell side, and blood and organ, what's consistent across all 3 forms of donation is that those from ethnic minority wait the longest to get the best matches, because people of color aren't registering in large enough numbers to actually make up the difference. So, for example, on the blood donation side, there's a massive need to get at least 40,000 black blood donors, new blood donors, because of the sickle cell problem of those patients who, on a one-off occasion, they can receive a blood transfusion from someone who's not ethnically the same as them. But if they need blood transfusion as part of their treatment, from the 2nd time onwards, the blood service would prefer the blood donor to be someone ethnically similar to that person and with the same blood group, because there are certain blood groups you find only in certain races, and in the black community, there's a particular blood group called RO, which you mainly find black people. They're trying to get more of us to give blood, to give those people a chance. On organ donation, especially on kidneys and liver, there's not enough people of color donating their organs, whether they be as a living donor, because you can donate a liver and a kidney as a living donor, especially for someone you know, if you just want to do it altruistically. And of course, we're all now, since May this year in England, we are now all of us on the organ donor list, basically saying, yes, I agree to doing that. Unless they opt out. But we say to people, please have a conversation with your family going forward, so that they know if something tragically happened, you agree to be an organ donor. And on the bone marrow side, again, a lack of numbers. That's all it is. As much as the work we've done over the last 25 years, there's still an urgency to get more people from our background especially, to register to give people around the world of colour a chance.
Thank you. Because we're pretty much running out of time, I just wanted to ask how, what are your goals over the next 6 months? What are you hoping to achieve?
What we're looking to achieve, in light of the pandemic situation we're in right now, is to utilize online the means and ways of communicating at a faster rate, because we don't have to come out to people. We can have these sort of meetings and get people to click and register faster than before, to influence the policy at government level to make sure that more is being done to embrace ethnic minorities, to be interested in becoming donors, so that donation becomes more of a normality in our communities in terms of discussion, and also just to consent to donate.
We've got the Peter's video is ready, so we'll now play that for you.
Hi, my name is Peter Macleod. I'm a father to 2 boys, Max and Seb, and husband to Jenny. My engagement with ACLT came about 3 years ago, just over, when I was diagnosed with an illness called myeloma. It's a blood cancer, and unfortunately it's an incurable blood cancer. And at the point that I was told I had this blood cancer, I was given a prognosis of 7 years. Now that prognosis came with a caveat, and the caveat was if I could find myself a stem cell donor, then I had every chance of beating that particular prognosis, which gave me something to hold on to. So I made a choice. I made a choice to go out and try to be proactive in finding not just myself, but anyone who faces that particular diagnosis, to help find a stem cell donor match. And this is where my engagement with ACLT, Oren and Bev and the guys, came from. Although I look white Caucasian, there's a phrase which says that you should never judge a book by its cover, and this is precisely why this is why I'm here talking to you guys today. Because although I look white Caucasian, my background is actually Chinese Portuguese, which is known as Macanese. So because of this, anyone who is of a minority ethnic background, non-white Caucasian standard, you've got infinitely less chance of finding yourself a stem cell donor match for a variety of reasons. But knowing this, I set out to try and right this inequity by working with the guys at ACLT. And my campaign, 10,000 Donors, set out to get more people. Originally 10,000 people signed up as stem cell donors, but equally as importantly, to help spread the word about how simple it is to register, but the power that each and every one of us has to potentially save a life through doing nothing more than a cheek swab. So since then, we've had over 85,000 people register, but more importantly than that, had 15 confirmed matches. So it is working. I'm still looking for my match, as so many patients out there are. And like I say, if you are from a minority ethnic community, then the odds are stacked against you. But we can all work together to fix this, which is why I'm hugely grateful to the guys at ACLT for supporting me in my position, but also all those patients out there who are searching for their stem cell donor match. So huge thank you from me for listening to this very brief video. Huge thank you for engaging with the guys at ACLT and for contributing to improving the odds for all of us who are searching for our stem cell donor match. So thank you.
So that just highlights Pete's story, story that we're very familiar with, but just to highlight, it's right across the racial spectrum as he highlighted. But
my name is
Thank you, Oren and Beverly. I don't think we've got enough time to go through Sarah's video, but we'll definitely circulate that to everyone afterwards. But thank you so much. If anyone who's joined today would like to donate or find out more about what you can do to become a stem cell donor, do visit the ACLT website or just get in touch with me and I can signpost you to where you need to go. But thank you, Beverly. Thank you, Orin, for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having us. I just want to say, please go to aclt.org for more information. It's all there.
And if you want to go and actually register directly as a stem cell donor, DKMS/ACLT. Right in front of you, you can just click register and get these sent to you. So you can send it back.
Yeah, just Google search DKMS ACLT, 2 words.